Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today it's my pleasure to have Laurie-Ann Murabito with us. Laurie-Ann is a business mentor and speaking strategist who works with online business owners to communicate with confidence and leverage speaking opportunities and be positioned as the expert, attract high-end clients, and monetize their authority. Speaking today is so much more than stages, and it's the fastest way to grow your brand and bottom line. Laurie-Ann, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Stephan. I've been looking forward to having this conversation.
Me too. Me too. So, let's first of all, if you could share your origin story of how you got into speaking as a such a important part of
Mhm.
marketing and sales and positioning and brand building, all that. You're really keen on speaking, and why is that?
Well, because I had some great success and right from the get-go. But
Mm.
I also want to share with people that I am a reformed, painfully shy girl who couldn't even make eye contact with people. And there was some particular moment in my life where I just thought, this is not going to serve me in the long run. And I just started making just a little bit of eye contact, a little bit of eye contact, and realized, you know what? The earth did not open up and swallow me whole. So maybe I could do this and participate in conversations with other people. And so that was really a confidence booster, in and of
Mm.
itself to get over that hurdle. But like a lot of entrepreneurs, I left my corporate job because it just felt like it was just sucking the life out of me. It wasn't what my true passion was. I wanted to do something else, except I left with no marketing expertise, no business plan, no nothing. I just thought, well, if I build it, they will come, which you and I both know does not work. And I started working with a couple of other women because women just network differently and they wanted to put together an event that would be education plus networking. And they
Mm.
sort of all looked at me and said, "You do the speaking." And I just accidentally just shook my head and said, "Okay, I'll do that." And self integrity is one of my highest values. So if I say I'm going to do something, even though it's completely against anything that's like inside of me, like I've never spoken before, I'm a shy person. Why would I even say yes? I still showed up and did it. It wasn't very good. And I share this story with people because everyone starts with their first speech. So there was no beginning. It was just literally me being almost like a college professor. I just spoke for 15, 20 minutes. And Stephan, this is how I ended it. Okay, I'm done now. That was it. Like I was like, I'm done. I'm done
And then you walked off
speaking.
stage.
And I just actually just wanted to get, oh, like all these eyes were on me because it was a packed room. I said, I'm done now. And if you want to speak to me privately, I'll be in the back of the room. And people came up to me and started, complimenting like what they had just learned. They had never heard that before. And how did I work with clients? Because I didn't mention anything about how I worked with people. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, well, you really want to know that? And so I did at first think that it was just a fluke. However, it happened again and again. And so that's what made me realize that speaking is this amazing form of marketing where you get to share your passion, with other people's audiences.
Yeah.
So that's how it all started.
Was there a defining moment in your, let's say, childhood where you realized being the shy girl was your identity? Was there like some sort of getting bullied on the playground moment or something where like that made you go more inward and become
Yes.
the introvert?
Yes. My family moved
Mm.
to Japan. And so I went from a public co-ed school to across the world. And this is back in a time when living in another country, you must be a military family, and we're not a military family. So I went from the public school system here to a Catholic all girls school that was predominantly 90% Japanese, because by going
Mhm.
through the school system, you're going to learn Japanese anyways because you're in the country. You're going to learn really good English, and then you have the opportunity really to learn another two languages while you're in school. So to be able to, so I think that was part of the reason why it was so interesting for Japanese people, and I'm 5'10". So I literally tower over people. And so, especially in Japan. So
Right.
people didn't want to talk to me. So I just there. So I think as a young woman who, I mean, I was 13 years old, that I just decided or interpreted their actions as there was something wrong with me. So
Mm.
maybe, so I definitely went more inward. I started reading. I would find places, in the school where nobody would see me so that I could just be by myself. But yeah, I think that's where it really started.
Yeah. And our biggest challenges end up being our biggest gifts. So then you
Yes.
ended up creating this whole brand and service offerings to help people who were in a similar position where they felt like they were either already invisible or wanted to be invisible, and then they're not powerfully sharing their message
Yeah. And I think
and
a lot of
missing out
people,
on that opportunity to reveal light in the world.
yeah, exactly. To share your light. And I think a lot of people still have that, like, I'm shy or I don't want to be judged, but still also at the same time, they have this desire, this voice that's inside of them that says they need to speak up. They need to
Mm,
share their story. They need to share their voice.
right.
Yeah.
And it's um, I think a label that doesn't necessarily serve us to think of ourselves as introverted or shy or a wallflower or any of that sort of stuff.
Right.
It doesn't serve you to
No.
put yourself out there in a way that already makes you uncomfortable before you're even on stage or in a room where you're supposed to be networking and you don't want to be there because you know it's going to be awkward because that's how you've labeled yourself as awkward,
Right.
socially
If
awkward, shy, introverted. All those labels are a self-fulfilling prophecy.
yeah, because if I label myself as that shy introvert, of course I'm going to hang around the outskirts of the room, or maybe
Hmm.
not even go in the room. Like I show up there and it's like last minute jitters. I think I'll just leave. I don't know anybody here. So like we start acting in accordance with that identity, and there you go. And it's just, we repeat it over and over again, and nothing changes until something changes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so true. I learned, I think this was from Jaya, when this was my first guest on Get Yourself Up Optimized, my other podcast. I learned this from her, I think, and that is these patterns that we repeat, they become ruts and our brain, right? So we keep rerunning that same pattern, and neurons that fire together wire together, and that just keeps just to reinforcing that pattern. It becomes a rut, and then ruts become uh, graves eventually. So patterns
Did-
become um, what's yeah, ruts to graves. I think there's another one in there
Ruts to
as well. I forget
graves.
which one,
That's
but it
powerful.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's important to break these patterns, and the sooner the better, because as time goes on, they can continue to get uh, deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
So
I completely
if
agree.
you could look back on one moment in your childhood where uh, you decided, like, this is my identity now, was there a particular incident at that all girls school in Japan where
Well,
you
the moment happened more when I came back to the United States, but I will tell you about when I was in Japan, that a teacher saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so
mm,
part of the curriculum was you had to take this, and it was literally called a speech class. But it wasn't like the speech that I do. It's more like a sit pretty and etiquette and how to have, like just casual conversation type class. But one day when we were leaving, and again, part of my identity was like, if teacher says to do something, you just shake your head and you just say, okay. So we're leaving
Yeah.
class, and teacher said to me, Laurie-Ann, the school's running a school-wide speech contest. I think you should do it. And I just went, okay. I mean, it's like a homework assignment. She said, okay. So I signed up for a humorous reading. I grabbed a couple of Irma Bombecks, and that was actually one of my first speeches. And I remember even losing my place because I was holding it off to the side and I was reading from it, but like looking to the audience. And I remember losing my place, and I just
Mm-hmm.
ad-libbed. It just went along with it. And then I found my place and I just finished. But she saw something in me because I didn't speak for years. But I have tried to like reach out to the school to see if she was still teaching, just to say, this is what this is what happened to me. And it all started because I really felt that she saw something. So obviously that memory has stayed with me for my entire life. But
Yeah.
the moment
That's so
kind of
cool.
came when I was a teenager, and I'm working at a grocery store, and like all the high school kids were all like coming in to come to work, and I would just see my fellow employees, the way that they were engaging with each other and making eye contact. And that's what did it
Mhm.
for me. Even though I would classify these people as being very much extroverts, but I just loved the way that they would engage with each other. And I was like, this not talking, not making eye contact is not going to serve me. And that's where I just started. Yeah. Thank you for that
And was
question.
there some sort of reason for your lack of eye contact? Because I know that's a sign, for example, of autism. For some kids, they have trouble making eye contact, and certainly uh, you know avoiding staying connected through eye contact. Is that
I
something that
think it
was?
was I think it was
Yeah.
really something that I learned from my mom. She
Mhm.
doesn't I just mimicked her behavior. Not, like, and as an adult, looking back on it, that's what I saw. My mother was afraid of people, didn't feel like she was worthy. She was the stay-at-home mom, no career. So
Mhm.
I just did what mom did, and mom didn't talk to people that she didn't know really, really well. Yeah. It's funny how we like
Wow.
our environment. Like, we have to be very careful about who we hang around with, and the
Mhm.
environment that we grew. I have no control over the environment that I grew up in, essentially. But looking back on it, like, I can see why I did the things that I did, why I was shy, why I was quiet, why I didn't want to make eye contact, why I didn't want to share my story, share my voice. I didn't think it was worthy. But like
Yeah.
now as an adult, I get to correct that, and even help my clients look back on their lives so that they can see, oh, it's not in my DNA that I have to be shy, the shy introvert. I actually have a voice, so how do I use my voice? Yeah.
Right. It's the fifth chakra, right? The throat chakra. If it's
Hmm.
closed or blocked, then you have trouble speaking your truth and sharing from within, because you can't get that out into the world. And
Yeah.
so very, very important. And you said that women network differently. I think they also uh, experience the different chakras differently. We have uh, I would imagine women having a harder time with the fifth chakra being closed
Mm.
and feeling unheard, because we're in such a man's world. And I think that's unfortunate. It's just it is what it is. And so this whole thing of mansplaining is real.
Yeah.
And they don't have women splaining, like there's it doesn't go the other direction.
Right. Right.
So,
And
yeah, what are your thoughts on all that?
well, I've had my human design done also, and somebody who did that reading, and my throat actually is closed. And so just probably like obviously something that I've had to overcome. And but I share that with people, and I remember like in this particular group setting that I said like, yeah, mine's closed and I'm a speaker. Like I use my voice to make sure
Mm,
that I get my message out there. And part of me and the reason why I shared that in the group was, just because your throat chakra is shut down doesn't mean it always has to be, doesn't mean that you can't still figure out like, so how do I still use my voice and my
right.
other skills and talents?
It actually gives you the focus of what to work on,
Yeah.
right? So the things that we procrastinate the most shine a light on what we're supposed to be working on. I learned that from Dan Sullivan, founder of Strategic Coach. The things that we have the hardest time with, that it's most outside of our comfort zone, or our biggest challenges, those are highlighting the biggest opportunities, biggest areas for growth and evolution. So yeah,
Yeah. And just
everything
noticing.
is either a blessing that's revealed or a blessing that's not yet to be revealed, but it's all a blessing. And so, having those challenges that you did in your childhood of being in a foreign country and not fitting in, and being um, kind of sidelined and feeling like
Mhm.
you were um, not wanted or
Just
not
not good
worthy,
enough.
or
Hmm.
any of that sort of stuff that served you to get you to who you are
To
now.
where I
It's
am
just,
now.
my
Yeah.
wife says sometimes the gift has the bow on the bottom.
Yes. Yes. That's beautiful. And I think, in speaking about like the whole procrastination stuff, for people who are listening, to like notice where you are procrastinating, you know, or what is your trigger? Like there's always
Hmm.
something that we sort of default to procrastinate with, and to figure out like what is that thing.
Yeah,
For me, it actually was, and this is going to sound really funny, it's laundry. We're like, oh, I have to go do laundry. Now, it's just me and my husband, so it's not like there's a lot of laundry to do. But it took me a while to realize that, like, that's what I would procrastinate with, was some sort of household task. So the
that was
solution
the
to that
go-to.
was one, to hire a house cleaner, and then just when I knew that I was like, let me go do laundry, and I would be like literally in the laundry and be like, all right, what am I procrastinating on? What is it that I need to do that I'm trying not to do, that I'm trying to like almost like push it down the scale? And
Yeah,
that's another way that I have gotten over like, oh, I'm afraid to go do the X, Y, and Z. Well, let me go do X, Y, and Z, and then you can do laundry as like the reward if you really want to. And so that's how I kind of like turned it around. But I think
that's
noticing
great.
where we're procrastinating, like what's the trigger, what's the thing that you love to go and do, so that you don't have to do the thing that you need to do.
Yeah, well, there's the trigger, which is separate from the escape, and so the laundry was the escape. Something triggered you
Yes.
wanting to escape, and it might have been the discomfort of, oh, that feels familiar. Was it oh, Mark Twain? History doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it rhymes.
I like that.
So we see something that reminds us of an incident in our childhood that we didn't like, that was uncomfortable, and we want to avoid that like the plague. So we procrastinate the heck out of that. And quick, we need an escape. What do we? Oh, let's go to our go-to, which is the laundry, or for some it's Netflix, for some it's Facebook or Instagram or other
Mhm.
social platforms, TikTok, etc. And then we get sucked in and lose the time slot that we had available to work on the thing that was really important.
Yeah, so we'll just do it tomorrow now. And then we just repeat the whole cycle. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you said you were at a corporate job that was, I don't know if you use these words, but soul sucking,
Yeah,
essentially.
I did.
Yeah.
Something like
So
that. Soul sucking, life sucking. Yeah.
what was the what was the straw that broke the camel's back there? What got you
Oh,
to the point where, all right, I'm out.
great
This is
question.
enough.
Great
I've had
question.
enough.
It's a great story too. So I come from healthcare, direct patient care. I actually did ultrasounds on hearts, arteries, and veins. That was my specialty. And then, so I went to work for one
Mhm,
of the manufacturers of the piece of equipment. I worked for Accuzon, who was then bought by Siemens, and really
mhm,
enjoyed it. It was one of those like, hey, this was my goal once I got into healthcare, was like, this is as far as you can go as a sonographer. So you're assisting in the sales of equipment. And
mhm,
I heard about this thing called coaching and went to a program that was down in Providence. I just worked my schedule that I would go see some customers, go check out this program. And I thought, wow, this is a really interesting concept. This would help me communicate better with my team and also with my customers. So that was my whole reason for why I started venturing down this coaching avenue, if you will. But then I fell in love with it.
mhm.
And that's what made me realize that this was calling me more so than making house calls at hospitals. So that's kind of what happened there. And it was also like I went from an environment where I had a constant flow of patients, and then all of a sudden I was completely on my own, essentially,
Mhm.
like working for Siemens, which was actually a really good warm up for working for myself, because it can be lonely. It can be a little frustrating. And I need that interaction with other people. So as a speaker, like I get to do that now. Like, even just
Yeah.
being able to chat with people virtually now, too.
You
That's
know, it's
how it
funny
all
if you look
happened.
back on your life, you're able to connect the dots oftentimes and say, wow, that was exactly the thing that I needed at the exact moment I needed
Yeah.
it. Like getting opportunity, which turned into like the heat being turned up on you, kind of like the frog in the pot sort of thing, slowly turn up the heat. And now you're at Siemens, and now you're feeling very alone and whatever. But it was this great thing that served you
Yeah.
because it prepared you to be off on your own. And having a mother who didn't maintain eye contact, ending up in Japan, like all of it was so perfect in
Perfectly
getting you to
orchestrated.
the person that you
Yeah.
are now and who you will become in the future, which is even a more amazing version of yourself. And it couldn't have been designed more perfectly. And I don't know if you believe in this sort of thing, like soul contracts, where you agree
Yes.
to be with this particular person as a soulmate, or this particular person as a business partner, or these are your parents, they choose you, you choose them, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be your
Yes.
mom in this lifetime, and I'm going to not look at you in the eye, and it's going to be a real problem, and you're going to end up going down this path because of it, but it's going to be really good for you. Like, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Oh, I believe it all. And sometimes I find it also very hard to wrap my head around it all too, that it's all
Hmm.
that perfectly orchestrated. But, like I forgot who I was when I came into this world, and I'm here like everybody else, and I'm learning my lessons, and I'm seeing how, just like you're talking, just how you were just beautifully wording it and laying it out, is like all of these dots are so beautifully connected. I'm actually having my records reading on this weekend from someone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
So this will. So you're talking about the Akashic records.
Yes. Um, I learned of it a few days before you and I actually had our pre-show meeting. And then you were
Hmm.
talking about it, and you guided me to a couple of podcasts of yours to go listen to, and I listened to them. And then I did a speaker showcase a few months ago, and the woman who hosted it, she's just lovely, lovely woman who lives here in New Hampshire. And so her and I had lunch, and so she starts telling me a little bit about herself, and I realize like there's this very spiritual woo side of her. And I'm like, "Do you talk about this?" And she said, "No." She goes, "It scares a lot of people off." But she does readings. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "I've been
Yeah.
wanting to do a reading." So she's actually doing my reading, and we're finally doing it on Saturday.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Like this stuff, you can't make this stuff
No,
up.
you
It's just too
can't.
perfect.
And that's exactly how I think this all worked out. Like a fellow speaker of mine told me about the speaker showcase. That's why I was
Mhm.
there. I meet her. We finally have lunch, and then I find out that she does these readings. So yeah, so she did do my reading. She said sometimes she goes, your soul won't doesn't want you to have a reading, and I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. I said, I'm sure that I have a very open soul though, and apparently I do.
Yeah. No, it's gonna come flowing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm really excited
I feel it.
just to hear
Yeah.
what she said. It was very interesting and it was very fun to do her my reading. So I'll keep you posted, Stefan.
Okay, awesome. Yes. So for our listener who's not familiar with the Akashic records, uh, every thought, word, and deed across all lifetimes, all space, time, dimension, it's all recorded. So you missed a magic moment, you didn't catch it on film or whatever. Don't worry, it was captured. It's in. There's a Sanskrit word called the Akash. Akash means primal substance,
Mhm.
and that is where everything is stored. So every thought, word, and deed, that's a lot
Yeah.
across all lifetimes. That's a lot. So being able to access that information is incredibly valuable.
Hmm.
And you can get an Akashic Records reader who can ask questions of your spiritual support team, and they'll have access to those records while the records are open with your permission. So that's what a reading is okay, I'm going to ask the record keepers and the spiritual support team of Laurie-Ann the questions that Laurie-Ann wants to know.
Yeah, you should definitely
And
refer people to that episode that you did. That you actually did a live reading.
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
wasn't.
yeah, that was with Anne Marie
Mhm.
Pizarro. That was on Get Yourself Optimized. That was in December of 2020. One example of something that I learned from that the reading that happened in the episode was my son has a single dimple on the right side, and I
Yeah.
have a single dimple on the left. And if you know anything about Kabbalah and Judaism, but I think it's more of a universal truth than just in one religion. The left side is the receiving side, and the right side is the giving side. So what that means is I'm here to receive love. So that's what the single dimple signifies on the left side for me, and then my son who's 2.5, he's here to give love.
To give
And
love.
that was
Wow.
so profound and beautiful. And I had never heard that before. And it made total sense. And I'd learned in Kabbalah about the left side versus right side. It all fell into place. It all clicked. And it's so meaningful. And it's like, there's nothing random. It just really
No.
helped me to just kind of settle into that
Yeah.
knowingness that nothing is random.
Nothing is random. And to think,
Yeah.
all of these stories that the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories of our lives. I mean, like those need to be shared also
Hmm.
with other people so that, so that people can, and that's the reason why we tell stories, in speaking, or I help my clients, you know, have a message and sprinkle it with the supporting stories is so that other people can see themselves in that story. Um, and, like it's just beautiful. It's just exactly what you've said, like everything, like it's in the records. It's going to happen. And we
Yeah.
may look at it as like as a surprise, but it's not a surprise. We
Hmm.
have guides that are helping us through all of this. And I know you recently had
Right.
somebody on your podcast who was talking about storytelling, Stephen Steers. Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that
Yep.
was,
Fellow JVMM member.
yes, yes, that was a
Yep.
great episode
Yep.
also.
So for our listener who is not familiar with JVMM, which is how we met, Joint Venture Mastermind, run by Dove Gordon. It's a great mastermind. It's all virtual. We meet every month on
Yeah,
Zoom, and then there are these smaller group meetings that will happen. And as well that are optional, but it's all optional, of course. But I try to make most of the monthly main meetings on Zoom, but I don't make those weak tie
Yeah.
explosion calls, is what Dove calls them very often. But anyways, that's how we met and how I met Stephen
Yeah.
Steers. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. That was a great episode. Stories, the power of stories. Like this, our whole life is a story. When you think about it, and like, how do we connect
Hmm.
the dots so that we can help other people, so that we can share our message?
Yeah. Well, facts tell, stories
That's
sell.
right.
And if you were to just recite a whole bunch of social proof points, like I won this award, and whatever, right? I dated a supermodel. I know that stuff is not very impressive. It just is boasting and
It's
braggadocious.
like reading a
But
resume.
if you weave it,
It's like
what's that?
reading off your resume.
Yeah, yeah. If on the other hand you weave it into stories,
Yes.
like let's say that you did date a supermodel, and then you're weaving it into a story. Like I got pulled on the side of the road by a cop this one time. A crazy story. I was with my girlfriend at the time, actual supermodel, but anyways, the cop said this one thing, and then she responded, and whatever, and we ended up in jail, right? So that is a great story
Yeah.
that weaves in the social proof point in a way that
Yes.
it's kind of it's like a pill pocket.
Yes.
Know what the pill pockets are for pets that don't want to take their medicine. You put
Yes.
the pill inside of
That's a great
the yummy pill
analogy.
pocket, and they chomp it all down, right? So it's a way of inserting those important social proof points that show that you are the authority,
Abs-
or you're
yes.
without sounding like full of yourself.
Yes.
It's
And
fun.
I tell people that the way that you tell a story, you don't want to play by play. Like, I woke up, then I decided to go to the grocery store, and at the grocery store I ran into this person. Not a play by play. You want to like almost like re-experience your story and share that
Hmm.
with others. So really take the time to craft your stories so that when you do need to weave it into conversation, it just naturally flows. Before I was in this space teaching people how to use and leverage speaking opportunities, I spoke in leadership and
Hmm.
corporate engagement, and I stories. And I said, like no small child ever said to their parent, Mom, Dad, tell me a bedtime statistic. No, they say, tell me a bedtime story, because they entertain us while we're learning something new. Mhm.
Yeah. So how would you tell somebody that you feel they're maybe thinking they're not worthy? What kind of story would you tell them? Something that you haven't already told
That I haven't already
on this
told on
episode.
here.
What would you tell them that would help them to step into their power, see their greatness, see how everything is just lining up so perfectly for their soul and
Mhm.
their soul's kind of elevation and growth? What kind of story would you pull out
I
of your hat?
probably would tell a story about a client. So I would take me out of it, and I
Okay.
would use a story from a client about a client who the one that's coming to mind right now is Kim was a busy mom, but she actually quit her corporate job because her boss was going to make her start speaking at meetings, and she was like, "Hell no, I'm not going to speak up at all," because she identified with being very quiet and she didn't feel like she had anything worthy to say. So she started her own business because that was, a good alternative. Then one year she just decided and told her friends, "This is the year I'm going to get over public speaking." And her friends were literally like, You're going to do that," which is what brought her into my world. And she did work on her public speaking. As a matter of fact, she not only gave her first speech and felt completely confident because she had a message that she was so passionate about that she wanted to share with other moms. She also got on TV, and she also got paid to write a book for her industry, which is home organization. She is now known as the famous home organizer of Louisville, Kentucky. And all because she raised her hand and said, "I'm going to get over this fear because I got something to say." besides overcoming her fear, and because she just had a message that she wanted to share, and she didn't want some fear holding her back. Because if this fear holds her back in this part of her life, like how we do one thing is how we do everything. Like what other fears have a grip on her that are just going to prevent her from becoming, the person, that she's supposed to be becoming here in this lifetime. So
Yeah.
so to answer
And
your
so,
question, I would always pull out a story about a client so that whoever I was speaking with would actually could see themselves in the story, and not just, oh, well, that's wonderful for you, Laurie-Ann, because you overcame your fear of speaking. But I think by using somebody else's, me telling a story of a client, of somebody that I worked with, somebody that I know, it I think it just helps people to see it, to see themselves like, this is what's possible for me.
yeah, so true. And it's great social proof because you're working in the evidence that your techniques deliver results just by the storytelling.
Yes. And I teach my clients, like, that's what you want to do when you're speaking, whether you're speaking on stage, Zoom, on a live stream, there's so many different forms of speaking now, is to weave in the stories that actually speak to people's objections.
Hmm.
So the story about Kim, she's a busy mom. So whenever someone says, like, I just don't have time for this, well, she's a busy mom of twins. She had a fear of speech. All of my clients have come to me with the commonality of, I'm afraid of public speaking, but I want to get over this fear so that I can get my message out there, because a lot of them know either how powerful speaking is going to be for them, or they just have this voice inside of them that says, I got to speak. So I teach people to, craft stories that speak to people's objections.
Hmm. That's good. That's good. And you don't even have to disclose any confidential client information in these stories. A great example of that comes to mind is the book "The Game of Life and How to Play It" by Florence Scovel Shinn, and it was written in the
Yes.
1920s. There,
Isn't that
it's
incredible?
ah, it's an amazing book. I had no idea uh, who Florence was. What like I never heard the book before, but it's one of those things where nothing's random, and it showed up on my YouTube homepage one day, and I just felt compelled to click it. I had no idea what I was in for. It was an
Yep.
audio reading of the book. I heard that the audible version is not very good, that the narrator is kind of grating, but the version on YouTube is amazing. I'll include it in the
Isn't that
show notes for
interesting?
this episode. But anyways, there's such
And
great storytelling in there. So many case examples, and she's not even giving the first name of these people. I had this client, and she really wanted this
right.
house, and the person who owned it didn't want to sell it, and she wanted it so badly, and eventually the guy died, and like it's like really riveting storytelling.
They're great stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fabulous stories. It's actually, the book is on my nightstand, and I
Really?
will read a little. Yeah, seriously. Like, what's one of her books? Your Word is Your Wand. But I will read a little bit, because it's just, one, it's so good to read something like that before you go to bed. But
Hmm.
that book is full of stories, and I don't feel like that particular book is meant to be read from beginning to end, and then it's like, then you say, okay, I checked the box, I've read that book. It's one that you just need to just like read a little bit over and over every single day. It's almost like how I feel about the Four Agreements.
Hmm.
That's another book that I feel like you should just read a little bit every single day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of stories.
That's funny. What are the odds that that's the book on your nightstand? And I went 50 years of never hearing of that book or the author, and it just pops in my head now to mention
Yeah,
it.
same here. And you mentioned earlier, when was it written? It was written in
1925 was when it was
19.
published, I think.
Can you imagine, almost 100 years ago, like, that this was this woman's life?
Hmm.
that she was teaching people, like, how powerful they were. Yeah, just interesting. Yeah, I only ran into the book just a couple of years ago also. So yeah, like 50 years without this book, and here it is now. It's fabulous.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so many people rave about Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. I hear about that a lot, but I never heard of this author or this book or any of her other books. Yeah,
Hmm.
good stuff.
Yeah, it is really good.
All right, so if let's say that the person on the other end listening or viewing this episode, they're thinking,
Mhm.
well, I don't have a fear of speaking. I'm not very good at it. And
Mm.
how do I get better? Do I go to Toastmasters? Because then there are a bunch of amateurs and, we're paying 25 cents every time we say, it just doesn't feel that productive or meaningful for me. Or, I think I maybe need to go join National Speakers Association, but all the people in that are not like, they're not in the corporate world like I am, and
Mhm.
they're just making that their business, trying to get bigger and bigger speaking gigs and with higher and higher um, fees. And I just don't relate to that. So I don't know what to do. Like, what would you tell somebody who wants to really up level their speaking ability? They don't have a fear of being in front of people talking, but they don't know what to do next.
Right. So I think Toastmasters has its place. So it will teach you like how to structure speeches. But at the same time, I also like to tell people that Toastmasters is not the real world. Because in the real
Mm-hmm.
world, you would never get up. What you have to do at Toastmasters is to say, "Thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Toastmaster. Hello, Toastmasters members and distinguished." You would never do that in real life. So it's a great place to like learn how to like put some speeches together, to have those beginning and ends. And just you have to take the feedback with some of it you can listen to and some of it you probably shouldn't listen to. So just you have to make that call. National Speakers Association, that group really is about the business of speaking.
Yeah.
There are some meetings that are about like how really to be a better orator, a better speaker, how to craft your speeches a little bit better, but it's really about the behind the scenes stuff. How do you get better speaking? You actually have to speak. It's like anything. It's like going to the gym. If you want to get stronger, you have to do reps, and you have to go to the gym again and again and again. So you really just need to start speaking. I mean, myself, like I help clients actually craft presentations so that they feel comfortable with a structure, but there's also a little bit of science behind like why I structure my speeches the way that I structure them. It's you got to get people's attention
Mm-hmm.
like right from the beginning. I tell people like what you want is you want people to put their phones down, and you want the audience to literally lean into what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got to tell them, why should they be listening to you? You have got to share I call it an authority section. And this is all before we get to the value section, which is really where you're teaching and sharing, in the presentation. Then how do you bring it to a close? And sometimes like a lot of that structure, really helps people have confidence. And when they have confidence, they show up in a different energy. If it's about saying ums and ahs and maybe not speaking loud enough, a lot of times what I do is I help my clients, like we take out words. I am good at clipping words out of sentences so that my clients do sound more powerful and more confident in what they're saying instead of rambling on about something and losing your audience. So that's a couple of things that would help. And it's just raising your hand for those opportunities. Look at the meetings that you're already attending, whether they're in person, whether they're virtual. If there's a speaking opportunity, raise your hand. Don't expect to be asked, because they may not know that you want to speak, but
Mm-hmm.
raise your hand and say, "Hey, I've got something that I think our club, our association, this conference might benefit from learning about." Just open the door and just ask people if they're looking for speakers. And that's how you get more speaking opportunities.
Yeah. It reminds me of a quote from Tony Robbins: repetition is the mother of skill. You put yourself
Yes.
out there enough and you will get the skills. Even if
Yes.
you don't have the best training or mentorship or whatever, you're just going to feel less nervous, more confident. And another thing too, I really like this distinction is that confidence isn't about fake it until you make it. It's about
Mm-mm.
act as if. Act
Yes.
as if. That's different. Fake it until you make it is like a lack of congruence or integrity or authenticity.
It's phony.
Whereas yeah, it's phony. Act as if is projecting yourself into the future, the version of you who already has and
Mm-hmm.
embodies that ability, that skill. That is who you're stepping into.
That, and I would add to that,
Mhm.
in the acting as if, look at your past. What experiences can you actually tap into that you could use in this situation that's actually going to help you also act as if
Mhm.
with more authority? Because we've all got experiences, but sometimes we just take them for granted or we overlook them because, oh, well, that wasn't exactly speaking. Like for myself, I used to teach fitness classes. Well, and this is also how I convinced myself to get more into speaking. I was like, well, if I can yell at people for an hour to motivate them, and this is like from college, I was teaching those classes, then surely I can talk reasonably to people with a microphone. So use your past experiences, really tap into what you've already done
Mhm.
to really become that person that you're meant to be.
Yeah, in
And I'm
fact,
sure that all that
it's
stuff from the
almost like you're
past was
telling
all put
yourself a
there.
story that
Yes, here we go, back to the stories.
yeah, you're telling yourself a better story that uh, helps you to feel empowered rather than disempowered. Like, for example, I used to believe that I was getting worse with my memory. And then I found that I still was uh, very good at remembering numbers. I can still remember numbers from my childhood, for example. And that was very empowering for me to recognize that it's not true that my memory is getting worse. What's more true is that I have an incredible knack for remembering numbers. And then it became more of a self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, if I'm good at remembering those, I'm also good at remembering people's names because now I care more about their
Hmm.
names since I learned that that's something they feel
Yeah.
like you care about them when you remember their names. So,
Yes.
anyways, yeah, that was really helpful, and it's just a better story to tell myself that helps me with my identity, and that identity shift then kind of helps everything else fall into place.
It does. It really does. So, stories aren't just what we're telling customers, and clients, and our children at bedtime. Stories, there's the important stories that we're telling ourselves every single day. So just take notice of the stories that you do tell yourself. Which ones
Yeah.
are empowering and which ones are disempowering. I actually have a text that shows up every single day on my phone that I created a zap that says every thought is a bullshit story, so tell yourself the right story. And I remind myself of that as a text message. It comes in at like 5 in the morning every single day so that I see that
Oh,
first thing
that's
in the
cool.
morning. It's like, all right, like what's the story I'm going to tell myself today? What
Yeah.
story do I need to change? Hmm.
That reminds me of the book that Marissa Peer just came out with, which is The Lies We Tell Ourselves.
Ooh, I
Mm.
like that title too. And I
Yeah,
think I've
and
heard of
and I
that.
just interviewed her about that book. That's on my other podcast on Get Yourself Optimized. I'll include a link in the show notes to that episode. Great episode. That's the second time I've had her on the show, and both interviews are outstanding and well worth your time to listen to.
Well, I'm definitely going to go listen to it.
Yeah, awesome.
Love
Well,
that.
So I'm curious if we're to give a next action that's very specific and hard to kind of wiggle out of, what would it be? Like maybe it's get put together a pitch for a speech that you send out to your local Lions or Rotaries, Rotary Club chapters to try and get a yes to speak to a group of people uh, in the next month, or like what would be something that you would give as homework?
Love that question. I get this asked all the time. Also, um, I would say, I tell people, make a list of the places that you're already part of. Like, look at your warm market. If it is the Lions Club, if it is a chamber event, if it is some sort of a mastermind, if it is even a Facebook community that routinely brings in some speakers and they do some live streaming, just raise your hand to those. So make the list, be willing to raise your hand, which means you're probably going to have to reach out to them. But I would tell you, just like reach out to them and just not say, hey, hire me as one of the speakers, book me as one of the speakers. I'm more of a fan of let's open the door to the conversation. So what I would say is find out who the decision maker is and just ask them, like how do they go about booking or finding and booking speakers? You're just being curious about the process so that then you can then ask them like, well, like, here's what I could speak on. Would
Mhm.
this be of any interest? And then they might be like, oh, like in your case, Stephan, like SEO. Well, actually, we were going to do this business, SEO idea like in the spring of 2023, but you never know. Like it may not be right now, but they may have a plan that's already set in place that they're looking for speakers to fill that plan. But you don't
Right.
know unless you open the door. And that's
You
my
got to plant
approach
the
to
seeds.
pitching. That's right, because and that's how things grow. As a matter of fact, one of my clients, there was a cruise, a marketing cruise. She's out in Seattle that she really wanted to go on.
Mhm.
And 2 years ago, she sent them a pitch. And of course, we all know what's happened the past couple of years. The speaking industry, and especially the cruise industry, was a little non existent. Well, she got an email this past spring that said, we'd like to bring you on as a speaker. And like it took 2 years for that seed to plant, for that seed to sprout, but it
Mhm.
does. So sometimes you got to be a little patient with all this too.
Yeah. Yep. We're in it for the long game, the
That's right.
long haul.
That's
Yeah.
right. It is a
Amazing.
definite
Well,
long game.
yes. Well, this was great. I'm really
Mm.
grateful to you for sharing your fabulous stories and with authenticity and vulnerability and all your wisdom. If our listener or viewer wants to work with you or have you speak at their event, or just to learn from you, right? So just
Yeah.
follow you and all that. What's the best place for them
So
to check
some of
out?
the best places are my website is speakandstandout.com. I'm over on Instagram at Laurie-Ann.Murabito. And I also have a podcast called Be in Demand with Laurie-Ann. And those are some great places that people could learn storytelling, can learn how to pitch, where to look for speaking opportunities, what speaking opportunities are, because I think that speaking needs to be redefined to not only fit your lifestyle, but also your business plan.
Hmm.
So thank
Awesome.
you, Stephan. It was really a pleasure. And I knew that we were just going to have a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much, Laurie-Ann, and thank you, listener. Get out there and make hay, but also make it a great day. And we'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.